tread water till you can't flow. You gotta know that she's the one. And how deep this river runs. How deep this river runs. How deep this river runs. How deep this river
I really have to see that there is a reason for two drummers, because either of these two drummers is so good that they could do the whole thing themselves. But they have slightly different feels, and I want to hear them differently. I want to hear them in different sections. I want to focus on that distinction between drummer A and drummer B. You know, we've got Anton Fig on drums and Greg Morrow on drums, who's a Nashville local. They're both astounding musicians. They're both phenomenal musicians, and I guess Greg comes from the soul world more. Anton has got a rock history, having worked with Kiss and everyone else, but he's also got this big world feel as well. He's got a lot of African jazz in him, so there's very distinct differences between these two players, and they're of equal caliber, so it's, you know, really exciting.
Sometimes, I mean, like I see, I don't think I'm the only person that is for, but sometimes if I'm playing, I see the groove as like as a ditch, you know, and you can sort of move around as long as you don't go over the sides, but you can kind of move around in that ditch, and it's almost like a shape, you know, and when things are very symmetrical, you know, that's kind of sounds nice to my ears when I see those kind of shapes. So yeah, it's just a way of staying in the groove, you know, or hearing the groove.
Playing with two drummers can be a challenge if they're not willing to communicate with each other. First of all, because to develop a vocabulary of who's going to play what, and you know, because what's the point of two drummers playing exactly the same thing? It's not that, it just gets messy. Anton and Greg just from the beginning had a really uncanny ability to communicate with each other, and it's like, you play this, and of course Kevin was making suggestions also.
Anton's been, you know, he's been very open to, I don't want to say the challenge, I don't like to think of it as it being a challenge, but the adventure of kind of taking a wholly different approach than you would normally take on a record. We've had fun. I think we've come up with some good parts that complement each other. So, and it's a very large noise, you know, on this record. So it's pretty imposing.
It's very powerful, and there's a lot of information. It creates, oddly, it creates room for the guitar and bass to live in separate frequencies also. You know, it's not as messy as one would think, and it's not something that I do very often, but I welcome the opportunity to do it more.
Perfect metronomical time, you know, put on a metronome, and then there's the human time, which is like your heartbeat, you know, but when people play, they tend to kind of push certain sections and pull back on certain sections, you know. And I always say like time and heartbeat equals feel, and the feel that you have, that's sort of like your individual pocket. And the pocket would be like being in that groove.
I went to Kevin Shirley the other day, and I just, you know, sometimes we're self-loathing blues rock people, Kevin and I, and we question ourselves a lot. We question if what we're doing is right. We question, you know, what we've done in the past. Has it been right? Is it right or wrong? It's all obviously worked out for me. But, you know, I went to him after we came up with a song that he suggested I write a melody. I came up with the melody on the spot, and we recorded it in like 2 or 3 takes. A song called "No Place for the Lonely," and we were at dinner afterwards, and we were just talking about the day. And I go, you know what, Kevin? You know what you and I know how to do pretty well at this point is make blues rock. And we also know how to make an eclectic album that sounds cohesive when you listen to it from track 1 to the end. And why question it at this point, you know? Every time we try to upset the apple cart or go in a different direction or run away from those core things that he and I have been doing for 10 years, we find ourselves reverting back to what he and I do best, make blues rock.
Desperation.
One of the big things about having a big picture is to make sure that there's balance throughout the record. So I have to try and keep in my mind to have balance throughout the record. So if a song comes to me that perhaps maybe sounds a little bit generic as a rock song, like something you've heard before, or something that's not particularly special, then I'll try and find another way to interpret it. And for instance, we did that with Livin' Is Easy. And once we reinterpret it, I suggested we do an acoustic version of it and make it a little bit kind of left field, a little bit avant-garde, even a little bit esoteric. And then once we started getting that esoteric feel where we took Anton off the drums and we put him on a box with the tambourine under his foot, and once we started getting that esoteric feel, to make it even more left of center, we got the screaming saxophone, and we'll probably put on some honky-tonk piano on it and just some instruments that you might not normally think of unless you were looking for an avant-garde piece. And I don't want it to sound like a folk song. I don't want it to sound like a singer-songwriter, Dave Matthews or something. I want it to be weird. And that's what I like. I like the weirdness. So you introduce all the weird elements and take a fairly normal song and just f it up a bit.
My instructions were to play more sound effects than notes and play like I was drunk. I've been told that before, so fortunately I knew what to do. But yeah, great instructions from production. Play like I'm under a street lamp somewhere out on the, downtown, and just wail, so.
It's new. She says gold is just a place to put my jewel. I work double shifts for one more pair of shoes. Just living easy is getting hard to do.
Because at the end of the day, we're talking about a music that's 100 years old and more, that everybody's played and perfected, and the masters perfected it, and the British reinterpreted it and reinvented it, and I reinvented or reinterpreted what the British did, and so on and so on. And then there's been all these, the new kids that are doing great and right. So at the end of the day, what are you going to do it? We're going to do it 145. Fuck it up. Make it challenging to the listener. Make it challenging to yourself to play and come up with, and make it something that can actually be listened to, but they also know that that's you. It's not. It couldn't be anybody else. Like who's that? Oh, that's got to be Joe. He's at it again, messing with tradition and all things that we hold near and dear to our hearts. Let me give it a 1-star review on Amazon.com.
This has been a really interesting recording with Joe this time. As usual, we don't hear the songs before we begin to record them. We all hear them at once. But without a list of songs, honest to God, I can't tell you. They're all good. You know, I wish I could tell you the specific names of the songs, but they go by so quickly. And, you know, I mean, I know that there are a number of styles that we've incorporated in a song. I mean, some of the stuff just rocks like crazy. There are 2 drummers, Anton Fig and Greg Morrow, and so that's a different approach, and that's really strong and powerful. And for the most part, we've recorded this essentially as a 3-piece with an auxiliary drummer.
The whole album is not going to be 2 drummers, but I think what we've done with the songs we've played together, I think they do have a very distinctive identity, and for lack of a better term, they're kind of tribal. I mean, they're very gut level, and you know, there's an element of brute force in it all.
That's been fun, and what we're doing is really covering a lot of musical ground. You know, everything from a rock, pretty strong rock stuff, to some shuffles, some blues shuffles, and even some more kind of folky, you know, softer stuff that maybe Joe's audience is going to discover another side of him with this record. You know,
I feel like it's going to be pretty a pretty rough album. You know, I think it's going to have some edge to it.